The Run with Manny Wilson podcast is brought to you by Fifth Investments. Investing is the easiest way to double your money, especially when you do it right. Most of us need help with getting started, right? I'm telling you right now, Fifth Investments is the easiest way to take your first step. You can sign up for the Daily Trading Journal, weekly newsletter, including trade ideas, market analysis, news, and information on navigating the stock market. They got you covered with long-term, short-term, options trading, and more. So go to fiftinvestments.com and use the promo code THERUN for $20 off your premier membership, or just sign up for free. Trade the stock market and perfect a skill that's going to last you a lifetime.
The information is not trading or investment advice. The newsletter is only a personal blog that is being offered publicly for general information purposes only.
That means if you're stealing home, you can do it. And
Right.
he can tag you out. It's not like a foul ball because it's live.
Mm-hmm.
I know this. I was an umpire. So I'm in the meeting and they go,
Mhm.
anybody have anything they want to share? And I went, Bob, to the kid who was the new intern. I said, let me explain. And I explained all that to him. There's silence at the table. There are 10 of us. Nobody said a word. I said, I just want you to understand. And he stood up and looked at me. He said, you're nothing but a picky bitch.
Whoa, that's crazy.
I said, no. I said,
Oh.
I'm an umpire. And I know that there's a difference. And ESPN.
Now tuned into the greatest.
The Run with Manny Wilson podcast.
The Run, the Manny Wilson podcast.
The best sports podcast there is.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson, all the way from Detroit to Chicago to your speakers and headphones. And today we're going all the way down to Arizona with our special guest here, Anne Montgomery, former sportscaster for the Phoenix Suns, NBC, ESPN, SportsCenter, authoress, journalist, and a former crew chief for sports officials as well. So she's done it all. I'm so glad to have her here. How is it going today?
It's great, Manny. I'm delighted to be here. Can't wait to see what we're going to talk about.
Yes, I got some great things. To talk about, and it's my pleasure to have you on. But before we get started, I always kick the show off with a ticket question. So you have to punch a ticket question in order to continue on through the show. It's something super simple, but I just want to know, what's your favorite sports moment you've witnessed while covering sports? Because you have a great history of covering sports. So I just got to hear this one question.
While
The answer.
covering sports or in all of sports, because I have officiating stories as well.
Okay, well, let's do it. Whichever one is great, or whichever one you like the most, whichever one is your favorite.
My favorite sports story was I was asked to umpire a charity baseball game between the San Francisco team and the Phoenix Firebirds, their AAA affiliate.
Okay,
And
all right.
Dusty Baker was, of course, the manager.
Mm.
And it was weird because it was back in the early 90s and women weren't usually umpires, and to have the plate was quite an honor, right? And so some people didn't want me to be there and they tried to get me out of that spot, but I ended up being able to be the plate umpire in this game, and it was televised.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Ponytail, right, in the 90s. And I've always had a problem with rules because as an official, you are a rules person. And so you know what the strike zone is, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You know exactly where it is.
Yep, I know.
A lot of people don't. And even umpires, you see how tiny those major league strike zones are? They're like postage stamps. But I read the rule book and I went, no, it's armpits to the top of the knees.
Oh.
I love to call the strike zone a really big one. And all the other umpires laughed at me.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I'm doing it literally. So I get out there, I get the lineup card from Dusty Baker. I'm all excited to be there. There's all kinds of people in the stands. And Dusty waits until the other manager walks away, and he crossed his arms and he said, you know, we have a plane to catch.
Because everything's
Exactly what Dusty wants. And so I basically went giant strike zone. First Dodger comes up, swings at the ball. I'm sorry, Giants, and swings at the ball and misses. And then I called him out and called strikes, and he was mad.
Oh,
and all
man.
the umpires are looking at me, and I called the game was over in an hour and 50 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Dusty, it's beautiful Chamber of Commerce kind of sunset over Phoenix. And Dusty standing down the third base line as everybody's leaving, and he waits and he looked at me and he nodded and walked away. And I don't know why that sticks with me. Dusty and I had a thing.
That sounds like a hell of an experience, especially like, you taking that literal of, all right, well, this is what the strike zone says. This is what the rules say. So
read it. It's really supposed to be from your armpits to your knees. And now it's like your belt buckle to the middle of your thighs.
Oh, wow.
And that's how it's written. So I truly enjoyed that.
Wow. That is pretty cool. It's kind of crazy because one more time.
I still have the lineup card.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. You got to frame it. But it's kind of cool because I never really understood. Like, I knew that, like, where the strike zone was, but I didn't even know it was a particular, like, all right, from the belt to the thumb or, from the armpit to this part. So it's kind of cool to hear that type of insight. So I like that. Ticket accepted.
And it's never changed. They've never changed the definition of the strike zone to my knowledge.
Wow.
And quite honestly, they have, I believe that umpires do it because the smaller it is, the less likely they are to get yelled at.
Right.
Like when you say that, I was married to a minor league umpire, so I know all the ins. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were all in. So
yeah, bottom line is they gave me so much crap for that, but Dusty was on top of that. I've always liked that.
That's cool. So the ticket is accepted. I accept that. That's a great story. And we're definitely going to touch on some of these reference stories as well in the crew chief, because you told me some information before the interview the other day that was so new to me. I wasn't aware. So we'll touch on a couple of things, but I have some questions here. I have some true and false questions, just basic. And I just want to hear some true and false. They're completely opinionated, so it's no right or wrong answer. Well, that's why, bring on a former journalist. So, of course, want to share some opinions too. So here's the first one, true or false. So pro athletes should not have to talk to media if they don't want to.
False. That's false. Now,
Okay.
I will say this. I truly don't believe journalists belong in the locker room. And of course, coming up in my time, there were no women in the locker room. So that was a big, huge issue.
Right.
But I think the locker room should be for the players.
I agree.
However, the players sneak out the back door. The bottom line is, I don't think we belong in a locker room, but I think the players owe it to us to come out and comment. And so the only reason we have to go in a locker room is because they disappear.
Okay.
So I would like to give them that space. And quite honestly, locker rooms are disgusting. Okay. I don't know why anybody thinks it's cool to be in there. It's not, especially after a football game or a basketball game. It's pretty disgusting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
However, we don't have a choice because a lot of them, you have a bad game. You don't want to talk to us.
That is true.
So I think they should be, they're making a ton of money, and part of their job is dealing with the media. And by the time they get to the pros, they should know how to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we ask them questions, because without the questions, we can't do our stories.
Yeah,
so
which is true.
The more stories we do in them, the more we pump up their brand.
Right.
Use it.
So that also works the opposite way too sometimes, depending on the person in the story they're working with. Because I love the point you made, because it gave me a different perspective, because I slightly disagree in terms of where my thoughts were coming from, of like, oh, well, media shouldn't, or athletes shouldn't have to talk to media if they don't want to, because not everyone wants, that, oh, I want to be a celebrity, I want to be a star, or I want, my name in papers. You wouldn't be a professional
athlete. You wouldn't be a professional
That's true.
athlete.
That is true. That part is true. But it's like, again, I've always thought of it like, because they are a professional athlete, like, it shouldn't, I don't know. In a way, I just always felt like it shouldn't be required, because it's like, a person can be a CEO or a great CEO, but it's like, we don't have to interview them for certain things, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's true too. That is true sometimes. Yeah.
I think, when you figure that if you're a professional athlete, you have been a star since Pop Warner, right?
That's
since you were 6 and scored 5 touchdowns. You have been interviewed your whole life. Why suddenly you're too cool to be interviewed? Now, I do think that, you've had a tough game. You're tired. Maybe you had a fight with your wife. I don't know. Right. The bottom line is, you still owe us some comments. Can you say, I don't have anything to say about that? Sure you can.
Okay.
But to just sneak out.
To sneak out the back door.
We can't. You know, it was the same way when people used to say, well, I shouldn't be in the locker room because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bottom line is I was on the same deadlines as everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
So if I was going to make it to the news with a story, I had no choice.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is very true. So I mean, I understand that. And I really do like that perspective. Because again, it's even though I wanted to give some pushback, it does give me, you know, kind of that idea, like, you know, they have been doing this for a long time. They have been doing it throughout the majority of their career. And all of a sudden, you know, they don't want to anymore. So I get it.
They're usually perfectly happy when they've had a great game.
Yeah, or yeah, great game, yeah. Or if they know it's going to be a great story. If they know it's good promo, then it's a little bit different. So I agree. I got you.
I will say this, that it's different in college, or it was when I was still reporting.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't go into a college locker room. They would hand out slips of paper in the press box and say, who would you like to interview from the college game?
Okay.
And you would write them down and they would bring them out to us. So I think that's a much better way to do it, but that hasn't happened in the pros yet.
I think that is cool too. I actually like that method. I feel like that is a little more organized as well. And it kind of,
yeah. Come on.
And it's
Who wants people coming in when they're dressing?
Yeah, that's true too. Now you're delaying their whole after game thought process because especially after a big win or a big loss, it's like, you know, those emotions are rambling. Sometimes a person may not know exactly how to express it right at that time. So a person has a big game and they end up losing or something. They're frustrated or whatever happened in the game. Like, they may have to process that too. So I feel like with media rushing right into the locker room, it kind of just speeds that up. And I think that's why sometimes we hear a lot of bad quotes and a lot of big attitudes from certain people, or, you know, a lot of pushback from the guys when they are answering questions. Cause it's like, I don't feel like talking right now anyway. Like, if that makes sense.
We all have bad days.
That's true.
Have bad days.
That is true.
Some days we have to suck it up and say, hey, I didn't do my job today. It's not that hard.
That is true.
The problem is, you know, a lot of pro athletes are very young.
Yeah.
And very, let's say, spoiled because they've always been the best. And they get to the pros where everybody was the best of the best.
Yeah. It's levels to it. It's levels to it in the pros.
Yeah. So I think they owe it to us because, let's face it, careers are very short in pro sports. And you got to go somewhere after that. And if you've got a whole stream of good interviews behind you, people are going to want to give you a job doing something else.
Yeah, that is true.
So as opposed to you're the jerk that walks away and says, no comment. You know, you're probably maybe not that popular. Use us.
Yeah.
Use the media to improve your brand.
Yeah, instead of being the jerk that's sneaking out of the back door. No, that makes sense. All right, I got another true or false for you. It's kind of turning into the WNBA. Now, the true or false, the statement, it's not a question. So it's sports broadcast networks. They've been doing a great job with the evolution in involving women in the sports broadcasting industry.
No.
No, let's hear it. Let's hear the thoughts. Why no? Okay.
And I know what people are going to say. My gosh, I see women sportscasters everywhere. Well, there's two reasons for that. One, in the old days, every city had NBC, ABC, CBS, and every city had two sportscasters. That was it. There really weren't a lot of jobs. So for women to get those jobs, it was practically unheard of. Now today, we have streaming sports. We have all kinds of cable channels. We have all kinds of sports opportunities. Now, in all these years, I mean, I started sportscasting in 1983. So yes, I'm old. Today, you see women all around, but are they getting the big jobs? No, they're sideline reporting. The most thankless, dumbest job in sportscasting.
Oh man, okay, I got to hear the elaboration on it, and we'll get it. We'll get to it, but we can keep going.
Oh, you want me to wait?
Yeah, we'll wait.
Okay,
Actually, no, let's do it. Let's jump into it right now. Let's do it. Why is it, the brainless job?
Okay, think about it. A coach is down 30-0. He's walking off the field and you shove a mic in his mouth. I mean, the bottom line is it's a terrible gig. And what do?
Yeah.
They put a woman on either sideline and they go, aren't we great? We have a woman on our crew. No. And on top of that, most of the questions they ask are, oh, Bob tore his ACL. How's he feeling? They might as well put nurses on both sides of the field. And because it's almost all medical questions, you rarely hear a woman talking about actual football.
Wow.
And that bugs me. Now, when you have sports like basketball that women play, I think there are a lot more opportunities. Yeah, I know when I officiated 5 sports: football, baseball, ice hockey, soccer, and basketball, all men's sports. I was told that I might get somewhere if I officiated women's sports. I officiated for 40 years, and right to the very end, they were telling me the same thing. Really too bad. That's baseball. So the point is that because women play basketball, there are many more opportunities in that kind of sports. Now, we don't have the same kind of sports coverage for WNBA.
Yeah, I agree.
There are more opportunities to coach and to be a broadcaster in those areas.
Okay.
Football. Tell me why there are no women in the booth. It's not brain surgery. A woman could do color or play-by-play.
That is true.
Do it now,
that is
and
true.
it kills me because was it 2018 or about when they had 2 women, Andrea Kramer, and I can't think of who the other woman was, who supposedly did play-by-play on a Monday night on a football game.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
I'll tell you why you don't remember. Because they pumped it like, isn't this great? We're allowing women to be in the booth. Well, the problem was when you turned on the game, it was Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. And then they said, if you want to hear the women do it, you have to go to this other station.
Oh, they broadcasted it on a different station and was like, okay,
tiny,
a smaller,
hard to find. And the women weren't even at the game.
Oh, wow.
They were
Damn.
doing it from the studio.
Damn.
And yet, since that time, now, unless I missed something, there have been no women in the booth. But
I haven't seen it.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame took both of their headphones and put it in the Hall of Fame saying, oh, look, women in football. I'm
wow.
like,
yeah, that's not cool. That's not cool. And that's one of those loopholes. Like, look how great we are. Look at what we did. And it's like, you really ain't do a damn thing. Like, that's kind of.
So I think there are more jobs for women. I think the women are still kind of shunted into covering women's sports. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand there are women sports writers and sportscasters all over the country today.
Right.
But I still don't think they're doing the big gigs. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was the beat reporter for the NFL Cardinals for 2 years. So I traveled with the team and, went to practice every day. And that was bizarre back then. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm out of the loop and there are more women who get those kinds of gigs.
Right.
But I don't know. The ones I see locally, I don't know that they're doing the serious sports things.
Right. No,
they probably are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you brought up a great point too before we started touching on the reporter job. But like how you mentioned, we don't see many in the broadcast booth or anything, or we'll see the glimpses of women in the industry and think, oh, wow, they're doing a great job. One of the highlights you brought up, like the broadcast situation. Another thing that I kind of want to bring up too is like, I know with ESPN, we see a lot of women in sports broadcasts, like as the help me out here. The position where they're pretty much just announcing the topics. They're just bringing up the topics. Not really doing much.
You mean when they like anchoring SportsCenter?
Yeah, like a moderator.
There's a woman there now doing that.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed.
Oh, I know what you mean. The women who are like in the middle of the commercial breaks, who are saying, coming up, we're doing blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely.
Here's one highlight from a game that you are not watching.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's mine.
Yeah, those situations, those are where I see most women. And then a lot of times, like, people will confuse that with, oh, they do a great job at bringing women in. And it's like, at least like having this conversation now, it kind of makes me even more aware, like, wow, I've never really seen multiple women like sit down and analyze the sport or go back and forth with a Stephen A. Smith or anything, unless they were a retired athlete. Other than that, like, and this is for basketball though, we're not even talking about football. Football, I don't think I've ever seen that. Maybe like once or twice where I've seen someone call into maybe NFL Network and get on the microphone and say a few things. But in terms of the person leading the show or a core person in the show, I don't really see that often. So that's a great point. I just wanted to, kind of run through that.
The NFL will have 6 men at halftime to do the halftime play. 6 men. But they could have thrown one in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're right. They tend to be the ones that go, coming up after the break.
The moderator.
Be doing this. not discussing, the defensive problems of the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, cool. All right. So I do have more true or false. We may jump around a little bit, but I do have some more questions as well. I want to jump into those. So I consider myself sports media. You're definitely considered sports media with the career that you've had. Do you feel as if media can take it too far? And if they did take it too far with like the whole Kyrie Irving situation of him being anti-Semitic with like him promoting a film, although he mentioned multiple times like, hey, I didn't mean anything. Do you feel like the media just took that way too far?
Well, when you say media, I think of it in two parts. First, there's traditional media, and then there's social media, where there's no holds barred. People say and do whatever they want.
It's crazy.
As an athlete, you have to be very careful what comes out of your mouth or out of your Twitter feed.
That's true.
Because people will catch on to stuff that isn't even necessarily offensive.
Yeah, very true.
To me, when you go to college and play a sport, there needs to be a class to teach you. Like, if you want to come out of sports as having a positive image that can carry you into the next phase of your life, please, think before you hit the Twitter button.
Yeah.
Because and so they are putting themselves in positions for media people to go, hey, Irving put out there the fact that he sounded like he was anti-Semitic, and he may be not acceptable in any form. So of course they jumped on him. And I think that's free game. Now, do I want to go around writing crappy stories about athletes? I don't. Right. I think I really, sports are leisure escape from reality. However, as a journalist, I can't ignore those things.
Right.
So, he puts it out on his social media. It's right there for all of us to see.
Yeah.
That's on you. And if you can't come out and say, gosh, I wasn't thinking, I made a terrible mistake and I apologize. He didn't do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree, I guess, to an extent too. So I agree with the part that when you put it out there, it is free game. It's completely free game. Like, you made your decision, you made your choice, and actions have consequences. So unfortunately, that is, like you said, it's free game. But to the point where, like, I look at it like, all right, it's getting out of control is when, like, throughout multiple interviews, it seemed like there was only choppings of the clips where he would like brush a question off. So there were, like, I remember there was a question they asked him, like, okay, like, what is the deal with your hatred? I'm summing it up. I'm just, I don't remember the vivid question, and he was pretty much just saying, like, I love everybody. I don't have hatred for anybody. I just want people to, educate themselves, people who like follow me to educate themselves. And I'm like, I get that part. But also at the same time, I think there was a misunderstanding of the other side of the people who weren't agreeing with him. Like, people were probably looking at it like, okay, well, the film said this, or this film has this in it, and you still didn't address this part. You still haven't addressed this part. And long story short, I think it could have simply been all brushed off and could have been easily avoided if it was just a simple apology from the jump. I feel like an apology is the mediator.
That's what he didn't do.
Correct.
Unless I missed it somewhere. He didn't say, gosh, I wasn't thinking, I'm so sorry I offended anybody. I was wrong. Please forgive me. End of story.
I agree. And I think about too, the part that you mentioned of like writing a bad story. That's where when I see these small situations turn into drastic measures, that's what I think about. I'm like, this isn't even a story. Like, how can you, what is it, that if you're a journalist, what is it that you're getting from like blowing this small little thing up to like 3 sentences where it seems like a big deal,
That's because it blows up on social media. And if you watch traditional media today, they often say, this is on Twitter, this is on Facebook, these things are happening. In the old days, you did the story and you moved on. Today, you follow, if 2 million people say something about it on the internet, then you have to keep going back to it because that makes it news. More news than it was before. So the fact that's why these stories hang around like they do. They didn't in the past. So I really think that this is just the nature of the two medias merging. And, if you're going to put that stuff out there, suck it up and live with it.
I mean, yeah, that is true. That was one of the things I said. I like him as a player, but I'm like, hey, with anybody, sports or not, like, all actions have consequences. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That was something I thought about. But Annie, I want to touch on something else too, because I remember you told me you caught a lot of hell for like unfair treatment being a sportscaster in the 90s. If you don't mind, could you share a few things, a few stories, if you will, about a situation of unfair treatment during your time in the 90s?
Yes, especially the ESPN.
Mhm.
I mean, I hate to diss the place, but
Right.
they make it very difficult.
Mm.
And for much of the time, there were very few women around. They hired 3 of us at the same time.
Oh, wow.
But we weren't all there at the station at the same time. So it was pretty much you were on your own. Didn't
Mhm.
bother me. I was used to being around. I'd worked for 3 stations before that. So
Mhm.
I was used to being the only girl in the group, and that's okay.
Right.
But and I could take it when some people didn't like me and some people didn't want to talk to me. And that's okay. I knew who they were and I stayed away from them.
Right.
The problem is when they don't allow you to do your job.
Mm.
For example, there was a gentleman at ESPN. This is prior to the internet being available, so you can look up anything.
Right.
And his name was Howie. And Howie knew everything about every sport ever in the history of the world.
Oh,
You
wow.
could say, Howie, when was the last time the Jets scored in the snow in December? And lost? And he'd go, well, that would be 1972. Yeah, he knew that. So
Right.
whenever you were up against a deadline and you needed information, you'd go, Howie, come over. And he'd go over to everybody and he'd help them. Or
Mhm.
he probably had a library somewhere. He would go find out, whatever.
Right. Right.
So one night I was up against the clock and I said, Howie, and I asked him a question. He gave me an answer. I went on the air. The next morning, I get a call from my boss ordering me into his office.
Oh, man.
And he said, why did you go on the air with that information? I said, oh, Howie gave it to me. And I turned around and Howie was in the door. And he said, no, I didn't.
Wow.
I never did anything to you.
Wow.
So-
That's sick right there. That's a little
So
sick.
I can no longer count on him to give me information. So I have to go way out of my way to find
Wow.
information or not use it in my story. And that was difficult. And then
Wow.
a similar situation, not similar, but the same kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
After every show, there's what's called a post-mortem. And that means all the people involved in the show, the producer, the directors, the other anchors, whoever was there, they all come in to a conference room and we discuss what went well with the show,
Mm-hmm.
what went wrong, and what we need to do better in the future. So sometimes we don't get to see our highlights ahead of time. They just
Okay.
kind of throw them at you. So hopefully you can see them. It's much easier. But when someone else writes your highlights, you never know what's happening.
Right. Right.
So a young intern, 21 years old, threw some highlights at me. Camera came on. I go, okay, we're going to Wrigley Field. And the first shot is supposed to be of a fan getting hit with a foul tip.
Oh, man.
Well, I'm an umpire, and I know that's not possible. There's a difference between a foul ball and a foul tip.
Okay.
A foul
Yeah.
ball is one where the umpire goes time, the ball goes, it's out of bounds.
Uh-huh.
And everybody, like if you're stealing second base, you have to go back.
Right.
And
Right.
it's a dead ball. Nothing can happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, a foul tip goes from the bat to the catcher's glove, and he catches it, and that's a caught strike.
Oh, wow.
But it's also the umpire will do this,
Yep.
not say a word. It's a live ball. That
Oh,
means
wow.
if you're stealing home, you can do it, and
Right.
he can tag you out. It's not like a foul ball because it's live.
Mm-hmm.
I know this. I was an umpire. So I'm in the meeting and they go,
Mhm.
anybody have anything they want to share? And I went, Bob, to the kid who was the new intern. I said, let me explain. And I explained all that to him.
Mm.
There's silence at the table. There are 10 of us. Nobody said a word. I said, I just want you to
Wow.
understand. And he stood up and looked at me. He said, you're nothing but a picky bitch.
Whoa, that's
And
crazy.
I said,
Damn.
no. I said,
Oh.
I'm an umpire. And I
Oh.
know that there's a difference. And ESPN should care that we know the difference between a foul ball and a foul tip in a Major League Baseball
Yeah,
game.
it's the rules. Damn.
And nobody said a word to me. Nobody agreed with me. The next morning, I got called into my boss's office and
Wow.
ordered to apologize to Bob.
Wow. See, that's
Because
some bull.
because I
That's some
hurt-
bull. That's some
I hurt his
BS.
I
That,
never raised my voice. I never argued. I just said, you just need to understand the difference. And they made me apologize to this 21-year-old kid.
Because his feelings was
because
hurt.
I hurt his feelings.
That's some BS right there.
If Chris Berman had said that, anybody would have called him into the boss's office and said, "Hey."
Hell no. That's sick, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was.
Wow, yeah, that's tough right there. Oh my goodness. I can't believe that. So all because he got his feelings hurt, his ego was a little bruised. All
I could say was, look, it's a big deal to me because there are people that know I was an umpire, and I remained an umpire for 25 years.
So
one of my first bad calls was screwing that up.
Oh wow! So you learned, like, you knew.
Stealing home, I killed the play. I had to send him back. I never made that mistake again. So I knew that rule.
Right.
And the fact that not one person in that meeting room backed me up, it was like they didn't really know the rule either.
Right. And then
I said, how can we be ESPN and not know the rules?
Yeah, that's not cool. And I just look at that situation as if you're in a position where you have to know the rule. You're in a position where you can't mess that up, because if you mess that up, they're definitely going to look at you like she thinks she knows something she doesn't. They're going to look at you sideways. So it's pretty fucked up to me that, and excuse my language, because I try not to use language like that, but it is. It's pretty fucked up that, you perfected the call, you perfected the book, and then you go by the book, and yet it's still incorrect. Or you still have to announce an apology to someone, or you still have to apologize to everyone. Like, that's just not cool, man. That's not cool at all.
And it made doing my job hard. It made it harder than it had to be.
That's not cool at all. Oh my goodness, man.
I'm like, if you hired me because I know sports, why are you upset that I know sports?
Right. Why are you upset that I'm going by the rules that was implemented by the game? Like, this is literally what the game says. Yeah, that's crazy. So look, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll jump back into some more conversation. Again, I mentioned I got some true or false questions still, and I still have some referee questions as well. So we'll finish off. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we will be right back after the break. The Run with Manny Wilson podcast is brought to you by Fifth Investments. Sports betting is cool, but you can really get the most out of your money trading in the stock market. You can make money when stocks go up, man. You can make money when stocks go down. But all you need is a little guidance. So use the Fifth Investment Stock Trading Journal to help you get started right away. Fifth Investments is a fantastic resource for daily trade ideas, market analysis, news, and information for navigating the stock market. They got you covered with long-term, short-term, options trading, and more. So go to fiftinvestments.com and use the promo code THERUN for $20 off your premier membership, or just sign up for free. Trade the stock market and perfect a skill that's going to last you a lifetime.
The information is not trading or investment advice. The newsletter is only a personal blog that is being offered publicly for general information purposes only.
Now, just because you're busy doesn't mean you got to be stressed. I'm crazy busy right there with you, but it can be easier. Next time you're on a run, just make it more fun and listen to The Run with Manny Wilson. It's The Run with Manny Wilson podcast. Were you ever aware of any situations that were similar to like Tim Donaghy? I know he was a huge name in like the side betting scandals and stuff going on with the NBA. Were you ever aware of anything going on similar to that?
You mean officials gambling on their own games?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to mention any names.
Yeah, please don't.
I will say this. When I was married to a minor league umpire for 12 years, and he came up through the system. He was in AAA for like 7 years. Then poor guy, he married me after his boss told him not to marry me because baseball didn't like its people involved with the media.
Okay.
He didn't believe it. I said, put off the wedding. The American League was down looking at him in spring training, and he was thinking he would go to the big leagues. And then we got married, and 3 days later, he got a pink slip in the mail, and no one ever spoke to him again.
Wow. Wow.
So they don't like media people involved with officials. Now, I will tell you this: my ex-husband is deceased. He died of COVID, and we were friends. You know, we always stayed friends. And
right.
Funny man, but he did share with me that there were major league umpires gambling on their own games.
Yeah,
there was a major league umpire who was running a book operation in Florida.
Wow.
And how did my husband know? He was there. He went in and saw them taking bets. This is, of course, before betting became okay.
Right. Yeah. Before it was legal.
He also told me that there were a couple of umpires who died strangely.
Oh, yeah. We know what that was about.
And they were gamblers.
Oh, my gosh.
So, in fact, he and I was my first book I ever wrote, because I'm an author, and it was called The Integrity of the Game. And it was about how these guys fell into gambling, how young players, I mean, my husband worked winter baseball in Venezuela and Colombia and Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Right.
And he said, you'd be in one of these countries and there'd be some young phenom pitcher, for example. And all of a sudden local people would take the guy under their wing and introduce them to beautiful women and take them to clubs and introduce them to gambling.
Wow.
It was that they wanted to get them hooked so that when they went to the big leagues, they could use them.
Wow.
So he told me stories like that, and I wrote a novel. That novel has still in a drawer. It's never been published.
Oh, wow.
But,
okay.
I knew a lot of those stories. I can't tell you anything about any other sport because I didn't run in those circles.
Right.
But it baffles me today that suddenly gambling is so okay with everybody.
Yeah, it's a huge thing.
In 20 minutes, we're going to have playoff games. I'm going to watch them. And how many of the commercials will be about legalized gambling?
Yeah, that's true.
The problem is, if you're an official in the NFL or the NBA or in the National Hockey League, you better not be doing that.
So that actually happened. Calvin Ridley, he plays, well, he used to play for my favorite NFL team, the Atlanta Falcons, but he was suspended. They suspended him for, I think it was 12 games or 12 weeks in the NFL because he was betting on games that, like, obviously he was playing too, but he was betting on games and he ended up getting caught. But it was just like a big shocker because I think the amount he made was less than like his contract or anything. He didn't make a significant amount, but he's still seen a huge suspension.
Not about the money.
Yeah,
It's about the thrill.
Yeah.
I mean, with some of the professional athletes who are blowing. I mean, what I read about Mickelson, you know, that he's gambled away $40 million. Now, don't quote me on that, but read that
right around that area.
Publication. So he clearly there's an issue there. And to me, if people are betting on your sport, you should not be anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Because optics are atrocious. Because who's to say you didn't drop that pass because you had a crap load of money on it somewhere else?
Yeah.
So I feel like, and to have an official do it, never. To me, an official does that once, they're done. They're never officiating again.
So I was just going to say, what's crazy is like the whole Tim Donaghy situation. When he did finally get caught and everything, there were other people that were like speculated, like being involved in the same type of scandal that are referees. But the reason why I think similar things are like still happening, especially across the NBA and other sports as well, is because a lot of those guys that were refereeing around the same time as him that he mentioned may have some sort of affiliation are still refereeing games. And I'm like, that's just not cool.
You consider in the old days, officials made no money. They got paid nothing.
Oh, wow.
Today,
Okay.
Being an official in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, you make a really good living.
Okay.
Finally have NFL officials who are doing it full time. I mean, it used to be you had to have a full-time job doing something else, making X dollars before you could even be considered to be an official in the NFL. So the bottom line is there's much more to lose today.
Right.
Whereas guys 40 years ago, there really wasn't any money in what they were doing. So maybe they were still spending their income, but that you have inside knowledge like that You have to be careful. My ex-husband also told me a story about he worked a game one night, and this is minor league baseball he was working. He's sitting in the bar after the game. Some guy comes up and buys him a drink, and they start talking about tomorrow's game. And the guy asked him about some injury stuff. And halfway through the conversation, Higgs, we call him Higgs, he started to get that funny feeling in his stomach. Like this guy was pumping him for information about injuries.
Okay.
Go umpire again tomorrow. So he wanted to know inside stuff. And so he said, you just can't talk to people about it.
Man. Yeah, that's crazy.
If gambling is your thing and you're an official, stop. You have to stop. It can't happen.
Yeah, I don't condone that either, especially if you're a referee, if you're an official.
And players too.
Yeah, players too.
Coaches can't gamble. As long as that is what you're getting paid to do, you cannot gamble. And if you do, you're fired. You're done. Your contract's null and void. I would put that in contracts. If you're on our basketball team and we find that you've been gambling, your contract's null and void. Goodbye. And you can't play for any other team.
Yeah.
To make that very clear, I think we wouldn't have to worry if someone accidentally dropped that pass.
Yeah.
Right.
Accidentally dropping that pass, as we've seen. All right, so I kind of want to move toward wrapping up. But I got one last question for you. Now, at least from my perspective and from what I've seen with watching at least WNBA basketball, I've seen a lot more coverage through social media and also too like airtime from the broadcast stations of the WNBA. Is there any steps you think the NBA could take to promote the WNBA even more to help it take the next step?
Well, the WNBA would not exist without the NBA.
Right.
The NBA basically props it up. I'm not saying it's not good basketball. I'm not saying it doesn't have an extremely devoted group of fans, but there aren't enough of them. There aren't enough. People go, why don't the women get primetime coverage? Because there aren't enough fans. And when there aren't enough fans, there's not enough advertisers who want to advertise there.
Now, would media change that?
Well, I don't think just throwing it on primetime TV is going to help.
That's true.
There were 3 women's basketball leagues, pro leagues prior to the WNBA. They all failed. And I don't think it's because people don't want to cover it. Women's basketball is especially popular in this country.
Yeah.
And in fact, I just finished a book called Inaugural Ballers, which was about the women who played in the 1976 Olympic team and won the silver medal.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's cool. I'm gonna have to put that link in the description.
And the bottom line is it traces how women's basketball grew in this country from nothing prior to Title IX, and the grief these women went through. And I can relate to that because I was kind of coming up at the same time as a broadcaster. Right. And it's very difficult, but they work their butts off. It's popular, but it's not profitable yet.
Right.
Big enough. And honestly, if the NBA hadn't been backing it all this time, it would have failed.
That does make sense.
Are you going to pay for primetime TV rates for a sport that only reaches 2 million people, or that 2 million people are interested in, as opposed to maybe 30 million people who care about the NBA? Right. So it's all about the money. Like everything.
Right. No, that makes sense. So I guess too, would a way to kind of help out the WNBA be to, bring in more athletes, bring in more players as well?
They don't have as many teams. You're right. I think, does the NBA have 30 teams?
Yeah, NBA got 30 and WNBA probably has like half of that.
Yeah. So you could, but they're not dumb. I mean, I think if they thought there were 10 more markets that would support a women's team, they would have them.
That is
true.
But
it's an economic problem. There are plenty of people who want to play. I do believe, despite the economics of it, that the women deserve more money than they're getting paid.
Yeah.
A star player gets $250,000 a year, which is nothing to sneeze at, as the rest of us would love to make that.
Right.
What the men are making, that's why our women have to go to other countries to supplement their income.
Yeah.
When you play in Russia, you make $1 million.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I think we could do better about providing them with a little more in the way of benefits and salary. But until it becomes profitable, you're not going to see any more coverage. And honestly, I don't think they fill stadiums. I mean, I haven't been to a game, but they have a very diehard group of fans, especially here in Arizona. They love
Phoenix Mercury,
but they still don't fill the arena like the Suns do, even though the Suns are terrible. But so I think it's all about money.
Yeah.
And you can't, if people don't want to spend the money to come see the team or to buy their products, then I don't know what we're supposed to do with that. It is a product. That's all.
Yeah. No, that is true. That makes a lot of sense that way. And like you said too, they're not dumb. If there was markets they knew like, oh, we can put another team here, like they probably would not hesitate to do that. So yeah, that makes sense. All right, well,
marketing and money and TV time and
yeah, just the basics of it, the core principles before you start making the money. You got to make sure that's right.
Let's face it, if people who are selling products believed that being tied with women's basketball could sell the products, they would jump all over it.
Yeah, I agree.
Numbers don't support it yet. They just don't.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And I think it's unfortunate, but I do personally enjoy that they're getting more airtime. That we start to actually see WNBA games on TV. That's something that I enjoy.
You don't see them on CBS, NBC, ABC.
Yeah, not the huge networks.
Cable, streaming, something.
Yeah.
So will they ever get there? I don't know. But we have so many more young women playing sports than as I was before Title IX. And now like 42% of high school athletes are female. Unheard of.
Yeah, wow.
So that's great. And they look up to these professional athletes. It gives them something to think about in their own lives. And I think there will be more and more fans as time goes on, because it's not strange for girls to play sports anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it will get better. Whether it ever reaches NBA, NFL, NHL status, I don't know.
Ways to go. There's ways to go. But Annie, look, if we got to wrap up. So if you want to throw anything out there, I know you're an authoress as well. So, and your books have nothing to do with sports, which I find incredibly interesting. We could really talk for a whole nother hour about that.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to be in touch. We're going to have to bring you back on. But for those who are listening, they're like, man, I want to check out one of her books. I want to find more about her. Where can they find any of your books?
They can go to my website, and it's Anne Montgomery writer.com. So that's Anne with an E, MontgomeryWriter.com. And all my books are there, and I blog, and this podcast will be there. In fact,
awesome. Yeah, we love that. We love that.
I'm delighted. People can feel free to contact me. My email's on there, and, happy to chat.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to put that same link in the description as well. So if you're listening, whether it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iPodcasts, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast, however you're listening, check the description if you need more information. And Annie, I appreciate you so much for coming on here, sitting down with me and having this conversation.
Well, I enjoy it. I really do. I miss microphones.
Well, again, like you said, I have to bring you back so we can do this again.
Okay.
All right. But hey, until then, you guys know where you can find me. Follow me on Instagram at The Run Podcast. Be sure to follow my personal page as well at I am Manny Wilson. And until then, we will be back later on next week, and so on and so on and so on.